that'll just make my life easier. And I was 19, like newly 19 at the time. And he was like, yeah, you gotta get over there and just like find your Muhammad and like go get married. And he would like talk about me having kids over there, like all, and I was like, why are you talking? And at the time I was so in such a bubble that like, and I was so young that I was like, is this normal? I guess, I don't know. And looking back on it, I'm like, oh gosh, that was so inappropriate. So inappropriate. But shortly after that is when the Iraq trip happened. And that trip was what, like 10 days, something like that. And I really loved Iraq. And that's something that after everything, I don't know that I could live there again just due to the history. But I loved living there. I loved working with the refugees. Like it feels crazy. Like when I came back and I was diagnosed with PTSD and all these things, it was so crazy to me that I was telling my therapist that I was suffering from PTSD and like couldn't get off my couch and was having nightmares and these things, that it was because of religious trauma and not because I lived in a war zone. I wasn't actually scared of Iraq. We had bombings, we had all kinds of crazy things. So like, yeah, probably not the safest place, obviously, but I loved living there. I loved it. I loved the culture. I loved the people. I loved the food was amazing. Like I loved my time there. And it feels like completely ruined by like the events that happened in the missions organization. So during that trip, I was with, I shared a room with, I really don't have a lot to say about that trip other than I really liked it. And I knew I wanted to move there, and people were already like from the organization, like Sean and Andrew and Kirsten were already kind of like pushing, like I knew I was going to move. Technically, like they wanted me to like meet Aspen and Carrie before saying yes, but they were like, no, you're like, that was it. Like I already knew before I was there. And I truthfully was so excited to move. I loved it. And I was able to fundraise. I got all the money I needed. Like, it worked out and I was really excited. And during the time, like in between after that trip and when I actually moved, because there was a whole summer between, because we went in, I think, March. I didn't move until I think August or September. I think it was September because it was just before I turned 21 and my birthday is mid-September. So I think I moved like early September. So I had all summer, and I remember Aspen and Carrie never talked to me. They were living there at the time. And I had like reached out to them. I had asked for their phone numbers, and they like didn't want to talk to me. And during that time, Carrie ended up leaving the organization, and Aspen told me bits and pieces about that later on, and I never fully understood it. I just know that Carrie, and that during that summer between like me visiting and me moving, Carrie had left. And I think she left and Aspen was on her own for like a few months. I don't know how many, because again, Aspen didn't talk to me. I always got the feeling that like we just didn't really get along. It's hard for me not to get along with anybody, but it just felt like we didn't connect. Does that make sense? Like I don't think there was any bad blood that I know. Like I don't think it was that we disliked each other. We just didn't really click. So I get there in September, and I kid you not, the house she had the furniture put into the house that day. She had lived in this huge house. They had moved her from the house that we visited, and she like there were still like boxes and stuff everywhere. And I was like, oh wow, like is the furniture new? And she goes, yeah. I convinced them to like let me buy it yesterday. It was delivered this morning. And I was like, how long have you been in this house? And she was like, months, like since like you and Kelly were here, like since that trip was here. She was in an empty house in Iraq living by herself because had left. And I was like, what do you mean? Like you couldn't buy furniture? And she goes, well, I told Light a Candle I wasn't going to use the money that I get from my supporters to furnish their office, because Light a Candle had to have a physical office for them to be an organization in the Middle East, like to be in Iraq. And that house was considered their organization, like their headquarters. And she goes, I'm not going to furnish their entire office. She's like, there's so much stuff that like I wouldn't even really use. It's just for the organization. She was like, yeah, they just ghosted me. They wouldn't send me money. They wouldn't talk to me. She goes, when I would ask for it, they would just stop talking to me. And this is my first day, like this is day one, I'm in Iraq, she's telling me this, and I'm like, what? And I was like, have you talked to Ruthie? I was like, because Ruthie wouldn't do that. Ruthie wouldn't do that. And she goes, she pulled up her emails, and it's her communicating with Ruthie, asking for money for an air conditioning unit, because, you know, we don't have AC. Asking for AC, asking for money to buy a couch. She didn't have a place to sit. She was sleeping on a foam pad in a bedroom with no AC in an Iraqi summer. And she was like, yeah, I haven't had the money to do anything. They kept telling her, like, well, you have a car, like, you can do whatever you want. And she was like, I'm a white young girl here by myself. She goes, I can't drive anywhere. And she didn't know how to drive stick either. She didn't have anyone to teach her, and she didn't learn. And so she was really like stuck in that house with nothing. And then she would get in trouble if she walked too far by herself. She would tell me, like, she was like, yeah, I walked to this store. And she goes, I stopped telling like Light a Candle leadership, who at the time, like her pastoral care was, I think, Ruthie. She was like, yeah, I stopped telling Ruthie when I do that because I get in trouble because they don't want me going that far by myself because I'm a girl. But she's like, I don't know what to do. She's like, I have to get groceries. Like, I don't have anyone here. And I was like, that's crazy. That's totally crazy. And then the first, like, Aspen and I were there together for 2-3 months before she left. Not very long. Like between September and Christmas. She left for Christmas and never came back. Again, we never really clicked, but we also were all each other had. So we spent all of our time together. And we didn't know what to do. Like, I knew how to drive stick, but neither of us like had any connections to like go do ministry anywhere. Like, we didn't know where to go. And again, like being in that region, again, being a young white girl, like who doesn't speak the language, like where were we gonna go? And we took Arabic lessons, like we got enrolled in lessons and we started doing that. And we knew of other organizations who are doing things, and so we'd sometimes, like, if they were having like a worship night, we might go to it or something like that. But at one point they asked us not to come to the worship nights because it was specifically for like they didn't want other organizations coming to their worship nights. They wanted it to only be for locals. So that then cut out like everything that we left the house for. And so we were like, well, okay. And there was one time we did manage to get a connection where we went to a refugee camp, and I remember just the two of us going. I think it was the same one that we went to on that trip, that really big camp that was like an hour, and we had to go through like disputed territory. We ended up getting a way to go there. We went there one time together, and I remember I stalled out the van like 100 times. And I remember like at a checkpoint, the guy was like, do you even know how to drive? And I'm like crying because I didn't know. It was so funny. It's funny now. But we did that one time and we both felt so overwhelmed because it was just the two of us and we didn't have anything. Like, what were we doing? Like, we were sent there to do like ministry, to do these big things, to be helping refugees, and they gave us nothing to do that. We had no food to give. We barely had food ourselves because our money often came late. We never knew how much money we would get per month because usually what we were told we would be getting didn't match what we actually got. Sometimes only by a couple $100s, and sometimes by a lot more than that. And so we were like supposed to be doing all these things, but we had no way of doing it. I mean, really, there were times that we couldn't even pay for gas in the vehicle. And Aspen was like, well, I think that Light a Candle should be paying for the gas because it's for ministry. She's like, it's work. And Light a Candle always said, no, you're driving it. How are we supposed to know that where you're driving it is actually for ministry purposes? And we were like, we'll count miles. Like we were like, if we drive to the grocery store, we won't count that. But if we're gonna drive an hour one way for us to go work in a refugee camp, you should pay for that gas. And they would not do it. And we kind of stopped trying to fight that because what can you do? And we only ended up doing that the one time because we didn't really do anything. We went there and we met with the camp director and we had tea and we asked how we can help. And they said these really big things that we knew we weren't going to be able to do, like, you know, food distributions and things like that. We didn't have the money for. So we just said, okay, thank you for your time. And we left. So that's kind of how it was for that like 3 months. And then I left for Christmas. I ended up leaving for Christmas that year too because they didn't want me to be there by myself, which I remember thinking was weird because they let Aspen live there by herself. But they pretty much told me by that time, sorry to back up a little bit, since Andrew and I had graduated third year, they decided to make Andrew and Kirsten the like pastoral care for the missions team for myself and Aspen. So that the month that I moved there was the month that they became our pastors as well. So that's important. And I remember Aspen being so excited because she goes, yeah, I haven't had pastoral care. She goes, I've been completely isolated, completely by myself. She goes, it's a fight to get an email back from Ruthie. And again, I remember thinking that's so weird because I was like, I work with Ruthie. How did I not know that this was going on? And so we had Andrew and Kirsten, but we hardly ever spoke to them. Like we would like email them. We would ask to set up like Aspen wanted weekly calls. I had just gotten there, so I was like, oh, once a month would be fine. Nothing. Like we didn't connect. I think Aspen did have some phone calls with them. I don't know the details of them. Like we didn't discuss it. I think that she had a couple during that time. I don't know, again, the content and how that played out. But I could tell that like Aspen was growing more and more upset with the organization. She had been in Iraq for, I think, exactly a year when she left, or like just about. And she was just like, I remember even at that time, like when we weren't really connecting, like I could tell it wasn't really anything to do with us. I was like, I don't think that she has the capacity to, like, I think she's like done, like I could tell that she was worn out. And I don't think at the time that I had the words for it. I don't think I knew how to help because everything that I'd been promised about the organization is like, I get there and I realize that it was all incorrect. And so I'm like processing that and being like, okay, what do I do? Because I still felt in my heart that that's where I was supposed to be. Kind of like how you were explaining, Christy, when you were saying that like you were like asking if you could leave. At that time, I was like, should I leave? It wasn't like I wasn't asking God if I could. It was more like, is this right? And I just kind of was like, well, I'm resilient. Like I can stick with it. I was like, this has been my dream for 3 years. Of course I'm going to stay. Like, I'm not going to just leave because things aren't what I thought, And so Andrew and Kirsten knew that I was going to go for Christmas and they were like, we don't want you to stay there by yourself. And I was like, okay, fine. And so I had to book myself a flight, which we all know flights are very expensive. So just asking like a missionary who doesn't know what money is going to be coming in to book a flight like that, like within 2 weeks, because they didn't give me enough time. Like it wasn't like a planned out thing. Like that was a lot. I remember being pretty mad about that. I went to see my family. I think I connected a bit with Liam at that time. I think that was one of the times I did. And then Andrew and Kirsten were living in Reading at the time, and they asked me to go to Reading for ministry time, for a retreat is what they called it. And so that's another flight that I'm paying for. And when I get there, they tell me that Aspen has resigned. I can't remember if she sent an email to the organization. I remember reading the email with Andrew and Kirsten. I can't remember if she sent it to me as well or if it doesn't matter. But she resigned. She was like, I'm not coming back. She said that she would return to get the things that she left. She did not. She never came back. And so they kept me in Reading. Andrew and Kirsten wanted me to stay there. And at the time, my younger sister was actually living in Reading. She was attending Bethel School of Ministry. And so I was able to stay with her for a bit. And I had other friends who were still living there. So I kind of couch hopped for like about a month. And they told me I couldn't go back to Iraq, but I was still technically a missionary. And so I had to stay there. I wasn't allowed to go back. I couldn't really go anywhere else. And so I was like, I remember making a joke. I was like, yeah, I'm basically homeless right now. I was like, all of my belongings are in Iraq. Like I've only got like my like carry-on size bag. I'm sleeping on my sister's couch. I'm sleeping on my friend's couch. I can't go anywhere. I didn't have a car. I was like, why am I here? And Andrew and Kirsten were calling it a retreat. And I was like, I don't need this. I don't need a retreat. And during that time, we found out that 2 other people were going to be joining the team in Iraq. And we had done there was one trip, one group that came out with me and Aspen, another like short-term trip. And 2 of the people that had come on that trip had applied and wanted to go and live there. And so it was Adam O'Neill and Sarah Fisher. I don't know if you guys would know their names. It's okay if not. But they wanted me to stay in Reading until Adam and Sarah came out to Reading, and then they were going to do 2 weeks. I think it was 2 weeks of like, they called it like, what did they call it? It was something silly. It was like they wanted to like prepare them. And it was like this like preparation course that they had put together. And I went, I didn't get that. And they said, yeah, we know. And I was like, well, I've already been living there. Can I just go back? Like I was like itching to go back. I was like, I don't care that nobody's there. Like that's where I live. Like that was it. And they were like, no, you can't go back. You can't go back. Not until Adam and Sarah are there. And you guys are going to fly out together. And I was like, okay, fine. And so they wanted me to go through this training with them. And it was such like, this is going to sound so rude. And I hope that you understand it. The training, we were getting missions training from people who had never done mission work. They'd only ever gone, and this is not to discredit, big things can happen in 2 weeks. I understand that, but they'd only ever gone on 2-week trips. They'd never lived anywhere else. Like they'd never like done anything like that. And so I remember being like, what are you going to tell me? They were like trying to counsel us on like what to wear or how to act in these things. And I was like, you don't know. Respectfully, like they had gone like to Iraq. I think Kirsten had gone twice, Andrew maybe once, something like that. But you're in such a bubble when you're on a short-term trip with a bunch of other Americans. You don't really know like the logistics of like how to interact with your Kurdish neighbors who don't like that you think that they're Arab. Like there's so many like things in that you went on a trip with a bunch of other Americans who think like you, which that's not to discredit that. I went on a bunch of those trips. I'm just saying like you don't know how to live there. That's a totally different thing. We had to sit through this 2-week training that I was like, none of this makes sense. None of it makes sense. And then Sarah, Adam, and I get out back to Iraq. And this is where I'd say like things just like progressively got worse and worse and worse. And I don't think I realized how bad things were until I ended up leaving. So first of all, again, Andrew and Kirsten are supposed to be our pastoral care. They just wouldn't talk to us for months at a time. And they'd be like, oh, sorry, we're traveling. Oh, sorry, we're with Sean. Sorry, we're with Sean. Sorry, we're with Sean. And so we were like, okay, well, you guys are the ones that send us our money every month. Can you make sure that it's on time? Because we have to pay our rent. We have to do, like, we have to buy food. Like, we actually have to live our lives. And where it was getting really tricky is on the Light a Candle website, like where you could go to donate, you could say like, donate to missionaries, and it could be like not specific, and it could just go to like ministry funding. And then you could also say, I want to give specifically to this missionary. So any funding that went to like the generic one, we used for ministry things. Like we would go, like we would buy food, we'd buy like for refugees, we'd like use that money. And then if someone donated specifically to one of us, we would each get an email saying so-and-so, or anonymous, depending on, donated X amount of money. And I remember there were multiple times I had supporters, like they would, and you know, like if a supporter like is sending a good amount of money, they usually tell you. Like they don't just send it, they tell you. So there were multiple times I had supporters reach out to me, and the amounts were like, it was various amounts. Like sometimes it was like $50. And then there was one time in particular, someone said, hey, the Lord put it on my heart, I'm going to give you $3,000. I never got that. And I asked Andrew and Kirsten about it. They never responded. Never responded. I asked them about it over the phone. I asked them about it via email. I had like a trail. They never responded. And I remember one time in particular, now this occurred, like this kind of thing happened regularly, but I stopped bugging them about it after this instance. They weren't responding to us, and it was, they were supposed to send our money on the first business day of the month, regardless of anything else. Like the first business day is when we would all get our like money for the month. I remember it got to the third business day. We hadn't heard anything from them. So all three of us, me, Adam, and Sarah, had contacted them. Like, hey, can you make sure to send it? Like our rent is due in 2 days, you know, and when you're getting like $800 a month, you really need that, like to be on time. Even though the dollar stretches really far in Iraqi Kurdistan, you still need it to be on time. And so it got to the third, and we had all messaged them and they didn't respond. And so I started getting like a little bit more direct in my messages, where I was like, hey, you need to respond. Like, you can't leave us hanging. Like, please tell me where our money is. Because it got to the 5th and we were telling our landlord, like, can you give us another few days? Which is not a fun thing. not a fun thing at all. Especially when you're already navigating with like a language barrier and all of that. And like, there's so many things. I was like, okay, this isn't good. And throughout the time, they weren't responding to us. And then they finally get back to me. I don't know if they got back to Adam and Sarah at the same time or not. But again, like, I wasn't really communicating with Adam and Sarah how much I was messaging them, like how much I was like emailing. And we used Facebook Messenger a lot as well. I think I was like messaging Andrew and Kirsten together and separate. I was like, give us something, you know? Like, if something's wrong, tell me that something's wrong. Don't just leave me hanging. And Kirsten ended up like after like the 5th day of them, or it was actually further out than that. I think it had been like a full week. And Kirsten had reached out to me and she's like, hey, can we set up a call to talk about this? Which I always like, I hate it. Like when they would say that, you knew you were in trouble because you didn't talk when things were going well. They only called you if they had something bad to say about you. And so I was like, okay. And so we set up a call for like the next day or something like that. And she talked about how me asking for money from them, who they were supposed to send the money that was donated for me, for Adam, for Sarah, for us. She was like, it just sounds like you're having a really hard time trusting the leadership God has put in your life. And she then like spent about 20 minutes telling me that I needed to figure out how to stop being so anxious, that I what is it? I'm a little fuzzy on, not, but you know the scripture in Psalms that's like, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, like that whole passage. She told me to read through that and pray that over myself until I felt I was in line with it, because I was not lining up with it. She goes, your actions are not lining up with scripture, and that I needed to work on trusting my leadership. And that she was like, have we ever not sent your money? And I said, yes, this month is an example of that. We're on I think it was the 8th or something like that. And I was like, you sent our money today. So yes, you have been late. And she goes, well, you really should contact us before you start to spiral like this. And I remember like I was so drained. I was so drained. And I loved living in Iraq. Like this is happening in my house, in my organization, but I had like friends, I had community, like I loved it there. So I just said, okay. And that was it. And I did not have another pastoral call with Kirsten. There were times that she wanted to set it up and I said no. I hated it. I was like, I hated the way I felt after that. Like, yeah, that phone call, like I remember feeling like physically sick and just being told that I didn't line up with who God created me to be, because I asked where my money was that she had agreed to send. Like, again, that was my payment. That was how I lived, So that kind of thing where they sent payments late, like, continued to happen. And like the instance with like the $3,000, that high number one didn't end up taking place until like, I think that happened like 2 months before I left, because I was trying to fundraise at the time. Specifically, I wanted to get my own car, because by that time we had 5 people living there and then 1 local guy on our team. So a team of 6, and we were sharing 1 vehicle, and it wasn't really practical. It wasn't really working. And so in my mind, I was going to live there until I died. So I was like, I need my own car. And I had told a few supporters about it, and they were like, yeah, absolutely, we want to help you with it. And so somebody had sent me $3,000 for that car, and I never got it. And that was one of the like final things that I was like, okay, I think I'm done. Um, so when Adam and Sarah did get out there, we started doing more ministry, that we got more connected, and they said that like having a guy on the team made it more accessible. They were like, well, you girls, like, you couldn't have done anything. Like, that was always like the verbiage, like, oh, you're a girl, you can't do anything. And again, believe me, I lived in Iraq. Like, I know that things are different, and women aren't looked at the same as they are in the United States. Like, I'm well aware of that. And in my mind, like, I was never trying to like push a boundary. Like, I never wanted to be in an unsafe situation. Like, I wasn't going to go in and expect that I could dress, talk, or act maybe the way that I could in the United States. But that was always the verbiage. Oh, you're a girl, you can't do that. You can't do anything. And so then I was like, then why would you even have me live here? Why would you have me live here if you really think that I can't do anything? And so before Adam had actually gotten there, they had made me country director, and because they needed somebody on paper to be the country director, and Aspen had left, so they put me. And then Adam got there, and they were like, "Oh, it's going to be Adam because no one's going to respect you." And it was like, okay. But I actually met a lot of other women who were doing it, local and foreign, who were like directors of various things. And in Erbil specifically, like where I lived, like people didn't care that much about it. You know, if I had been in like Baghdad or something, it probably would have been different. But where we were, like it was relatively modern for the Middle East. You know, you didn't have to wear a head covering, like women could drive, you could have a business, you could do whatever. Like, and so they gave Adam the job, but Adam didn't know what he was doing. I didn't know what I was doing. But it was like, well, now you can actually make connections and now you can introduce yourself to locals. They didn't want me to go ever by myself to a local's house, even if it was a female, because they didn't want, to be honest, I never got like a straight answer for some of these things. Um, your guess is as good as mine. Some of the rules didn't really feel like, all of the rules came from people who never lived there. And some of the people who made the rules never even visited. So I don't know where they came from. Uh, but it was like some of the dress code stuff, like, and again, we lived in Iraq, so I know like I always wore like something long enough to cover my butt. Like, you know, I was covered collarbones to ankles. You know, it's not like I went outside wearing a tank top and like short shorts. I never tried to do anything like that. I had no interest in it. But I remember like about halfway through my time there, I was there for about 3 years, just shy of 3 years technically. So like 2 3/4, but whatever. Uh, about halfway through that time, I started just like there were other organizations, like other missionary organizations that lived in our neighborhood. And I remember like we had like tried to make connection with them, and for whatever reason, like Andrew and Kirsten really wanted us to be friends with them, and they didn't really want to be friends with us. And I never really knew why. I I don't know. But about halfway through the time, I started getting like calls from Andrew and Kirsten saying that the other organizations were saying that I was dressing inappropriately and walking around town. And I went, me specifically, or like me and Sarah? Because we like, if there was ever a time that one of us was like, is this appropriate? Like we would ask each other. And I was like, of course we're 19, 20, 21-year-old girls. So like, whatever. But we, I wouldn't say that we were like intentionally being immodest. And we came to know our neighbors really well. And there was like a little corner market right by our house, like literally less than, it was like a 2 minute walk from our house that we could go get like produce and like whatever. And so we knew our neighbors really well. And so sometimes we would just wear a t-shirt. Like we didn't cover to our wrists when we were in our neighborhood because neither did anyone else. You know, in the middle of summer, like our shirts would still cover our butts. Like it wasn't like we were wearing like tight skinny jeans and like, you know, like showing off like and if our shirt wasn't long enough, we tied something around our waist. Like, you know, like we were still, I would still say we were modest. Like it was a t-shirt and our neighbors wore that. Like even our American neighbors dressed like we did. We were kind of like observing, and so we were like, okay, this is appropriate. And if we went somewhere we didn't know, we always covered all of our arms, like everything. But in our neighborhood, if we were just walking to go buy some milk and come home, we would just put on a t-shirt. And I don't know, I to be honest, there's a part of me that's always wondered if it was actually the other organization that made this comment or if it was Sarah Fisher, because there was some more on that, like I'll get to it, but she would always like say that I was doing things that I wasn't doing. And then the leadership would confront me. And this is not to say that I did everything right. Like I was a young girl and I was going through all of these things, and um I really don't know, but I wondered if it was actually her that said this because no one made a comment about how she dressed. It was always me. And when I would ask for specifics, like, can you tell me what I wore so that I don't do it again? Can you tell me? Like, I remember asking directly, I talked with Andrew and Kirsten. And I remember being kind of irritated that I was having to talk to Andrew about it. Like he was leading the conversation. And that I remember feeling like really uncomfortable because I was like, can you tell me what I've worn? I was like, and this was like, they had just come out for a visit. And I was like, you guys were just here. You spend a week with us. And I said, what you saw me wear during that time is what I wear. I said, I don't have like a secret closet. I didn't wear specific clothes because you were visiting and I was hiding. I said, those are my clothes. And I said, Andrew, did you notice I was wearing something inappropriate? Can you tell me what it was that I wore? And he said, well, no, you looked fine when we were there. Like, I have no comment about that. He goes, I would have said something at the time if I noticed. And I said, okay, then what's the problem? And he goes, well, if other people are noticing it, like something must be going on. And so it was just immediately like anything that I said was completely discredited and I was hiding something, is what they were like, we don't know, like maybe it has something to do with your spirit. And I was like, what does that even mean? Like, I was like, my spirit of what? Like, tell me. Like, and I remember, like, I was like begging, and I prayed about it for so long. I was like, God, am I being promiscuous? Am I doing something wrong? And I just didn't know what. Like, I didn't know what was going on. And there was some. There was an issue with me and Sarah had some tough times. We joined a rugby team that was a bunch of like Americans, Europeans. There were a couple of local Kurdish people, but it was mostly Americans and Europeans. And all three of us joined. I'm not particularly sporty. I was never good at rugby. But it was just something fun for us to do where we didn't have to speak Arabic and we got to just go have fun. And it was touch rugby, like nothing crazy. And I remember like one of the guys from the team ended up asking me out. I told him no. To be totally honest, like being a white girl in the Middle East, you get asked out like all the time. And it really has nothing to do with how you look. It's just, it is what it is, you know? And I know Sarah would get asked out too. Like all these, like it was regular. Like you just kind of go, no, thank you. Like, you know, and you move on. But for whatever reason, I don't know why, but I remember like her confronting me about like, she was like, well, you're joining rugby to get attention from guys. And I was like, I'm not. And I ended up sitting out of rugby most of the time I went because I'm not sporty. I don't enjoy it. I just went to go like, because that's where my roommates were going. That's what, you know, I was like, what do you mean? And so I stopped going because I was like, well, maybe I'm unintentionally flirting, right? Like I feel like every girl has had that like, oh my gosh, did I flirt with him? Like, did I do that? Did I? Was I just being nice? Did he think that I? And so in my mind, I couldn't go anymore. But then Sarah started telling Andrew and Kirsten that I was pulling away from the group because I wouldn't spend time with them outside of work. They were like, she directly said, well, stopped going to rugby. She doesn't want to spend time with us. She doesn't like us. And so Andrew and Kirsten were calling me asking why I was pulling away. And so then it was like, okay, I can't go. I can't stay. What's going on? Like, what can I do? So that was going on. And gosh, I'm trying to, like, the timeline of it is so all over the place. They ended up sending out someone to stay with us for a month. She was a very free-spirited person. And she got out there and she was like, oh, I'm just called to the Middle East. Like, this is what, you know, this is my calling, whatever. And at first I was like, oh, that's awesome. Like, I can totally relate to that. Like, you're like, and she stayed in the girl's house. She stayed at my house. And she was supposed to be out there. I think she was out there for a month, but she like had talks of extending it. I don't know. Like, it was kind of like a trial run. They wanted to see if she could move there. And she, again, at the time when this happened, I was probably 21. She was 27, 28. So she was like a little bit older. And I remember feeling like I had to babysit her because she would go outside in shorts. We had, Kelly, you'll probably remember this. You know how all of the houses had like a gate in the front and they were like, it was like cement? She would get up in the morning. Like there were times that I caught her like before sunrise, like up until sunrise, she would be dancing on the gate in shorts. And she said God told her to do that to bring freedom. You cannot be doing that. You cannot be doing that. I know that our neighborhood was considered progressive for the area that we were in, uh, but you cannot be doing that. And so I had talked to Sarah and Adam, and we were all three like having these struggles where she was just pushing these boundaries that we knew were unsafe, like the kind of boundaries that you don't push. And I remember we tried to have a call with Andrew and Kirsten about it, and they were like, well, she's just free spirited. You know, if God tells her to do it, who are you to tell her no? And I was like, you realize that that's putting us in danger as well. She's putting herself in danger. And I said, also, you're putting the organization in danger because this is our office. Like, we have a sign out front that says light a candle. Like, part of the one of the rules to have, like, for it to be considered an office is you had to have it, like, you had to have signage. So people knew that it was an organization. They knew that we lived there. They knew it was American. They knew all of these things. And I was like, that's putting a huge target on us. That's not okay. And she would also, like, go onto the roof and she would sing as loud as she can. And she goes, my goal is for the whole neighborhood to hear me. And like different things like that where I'm like, that's just not okay. And I remember one time, like, because Sarah and Adam refused to tell her no. They were like, well, we don't feel comfortable. And I said, somebody has to tell her this isn't okay. And so I remember I sat her down one time and I was like, I understand that the Holy Spirit might be telling you these things, but I was like, do you really think the Holy Spirit's trying to put your life at risk? Because that's what you're doing when you're doing these things. This isn't okay. And I was like, I remember I had this conversation with her. And then her and Adam and Sarah had sat me down and said that I just had a problem with, and that I had to learn to give grace and stop trying to stifle the Holy Spirit. And I was like, am I crazy? I felt crazy. And it's one of those things that like maybe it's hard for me to remember exactly what I said to like, it's hard for me to remember exactly like the words and everything. It's been a number of years. And I was 21, so I might not have been as graceful at like, you know, I didn't have the wisdom to back some things up, you know, things like that. But I just remember being like, I cannot be the crazy one in this situation. Like what she's doing is not okay. Like at the time I firmly believed that the Holy Spirit could lead you to do things that, you know, we're pushing boundaries and like, you know, I wasn't saying that she couldn't do anything. It was just like, you can't dance in shorts and a tank top on our gate. You can't do that. Like, how am I the bad guy for saying that? You know? And so she ended up leaving, and I got talked to a few times about that because apparently I had no place to say those things to tell her she couldn't do it. And she ended up joining another organization and moving to Baghdad, which I never heard from her again. We obviously were not friends. Um, and so I heard that she moved to Baghdad, and we hosted another. Oh, while she was there, we hosted another short-term team um, with some other people, and even they like I had people come up to me and ask me about like they were like, is she okay here? Like, and to be totally honest, I had people ask me if she was like this is going to sound really harsh. I hope that just people were asking me if she was mentally okay enough to be in the position that she was in because they did not believe that she acted her age, and she would like ask us to stop the car and jump out of the car and like do something because the Holy Spirit told her to. Like different things like that where it's just like people were like, do you feel safe? Like I got asked that by multiple people who were visiting. Um And I kind of brushed it off because I was like, well, it's not really up to me. Um, so during that time where another team was there, Andrew and Kirsten led that trip, so they were there as well. There was a time that we were all over the age of 21, and Andrew and Kirsten, they wanted us to have like a team dinner. A couple of the long-term team ended up staying an additional 2 weeks. So most of the team had left, but there were like a few extra people staying with us. And they bought a couple of bottles of wine and we were going to have dinner. Nobody was getting drunk, but we all had like they wanted to do like a Shabbat dinner and they wanted to have wine and all these things. And we like spent a long time cooking, preparing, whatever. And it was hosted at my house, and it was almost dinner time. We had all like opened the wine and we all had a glass. And we were kind of just, I think there was like something in the oven or something like that. We were like 20 minutes out from having dinner. And almost everyone decided they wanted to go for a walk around the neighborhood. And we had had a full like ministry day, and I wanted to, like, somebody had to stay, and like just because the oven was on. And I was like, I'll stay here. And I didn't know it at the time, but one of the like guys who was visiting stayed. And he was sitting in the living room, and like again, everybody had a glass of wine. It wasn't like I specifically was drinking and nobody else was, or like I had this much wine. And the guy, his name is Vincent. I don't even remember his last name. I knew him for 2 weeks, so don't know him. He also had a glass of wine. Everybody else had gone on a walk. I went to the kitchen and I came back to the living room, and I noticed Vincent was still there. We had like a decent sized couch. It was like it could fit like three, probably four people. He was sitting on the couch and I sat on the same couch, but like not next to him. You know what I mean? We were just sitting on the same couch, and there was a good full cushion between us. Feet weren't on the couch, like 4 feet on the floor. Like we weren't even like bodies turning to face each other. And I was just asking him about like what he liked about the trip. You know, we were just chit chatting. I was like, oh, tell me your favorite thing about Iraq. What do you like about the food? Like, tell, you know. And it was just the two of us in the room. I didn't think a thing of it. We were alone in that room for 2 minutes, maybe three. I didn't think a thing of it. Andrew and Kirsten are the first people to come back into the house, and you open the door into our living room where we're sitting. And they both just kind of looked at me. And I immediately knew that they were unhappy. Like they didn't say anything, but I remember like, oh crap. And in that exact moment I remember I like looked down at myself. I went, okay, I'm not wearing anything wrong. I was like, I'm holding a glass of wine, but their wine is in the kitchen, so that can't be it. Like, and it was their idea to get the wine. And I was just like, oh, I'm going to hear about this, but I don't know what it is. And so they didn't talk to me about it then. They waited until they got irritated about something else. I might have, who knows? Like, I think that I asked them about money again, and they brought it up. Like, I remember they brought it up at a time that was completely irrelevant, like a month or two down the road. It was like they held it. And they were like, you really just need to work on getting in line with the Holy Spirit. And they were like, it wasn't okay when we walked in. Again, this is 1-2 months later, like not even immediately after the fact, not even in person while they're still there. They didn't address it then. Down like months later, when they're irritated with me about something else, you need to get in line with the Holy Spirit. When we walked in and you were drinking alcohol next to a man on the couch, that was completely inappropriate. You should have known better. And I said, it was my house. And you bought the wine. You opened the bottles. You poured me a glass. And I said, I barely know Vincent. I was asking him who he prayed for that day. I was asking him what food he liked. And I said, I haven't spoken to him since. And I said, we didn't touch. I didn't even hug him. I was like, I sat on my couch in my living room. What was wrong about that? And they just said that I was acting like that it was promiscuous. And that was a word that was just thrown around. Like I was told all the time that I was acting inappropriately, that I was too flirtatious, that I was, and I remember so many times begging them again to give me an example. And I never got one. I never got one. And I would always say, like, to I want to be a good missionary. I want to do this right. Like, tell me what I'm doing so I can be better. I said, if you see something that I don't, tell me so that I can know. And they said, well, we are telling you. And I said, well, you're not giving me any examples. Like, how am I supposed to just get better? And they were like, well, you just have to pray until God makes it right. What do you do with that? I never figured that out. Uh, and so many times, like, I just remember being so angry. Like, I was just fuming. And I knew that I wanted to live in Iraq. In my mind, I was going to be there for the rest of my life. So whenever I got too frustrated or whatever, like I just shut it down because I was like, I can't live here without them. So I just have to suck it up. You know, there's not really anything I can do. Um, so that happened, and then two more missionaries joined the team. Um, and to be honest, things happened with one of them that I don't feel super comfortable about talking. Um, I was sexually assaulted by one of them, and uh, he like tried to contact me. He even tried reaching out to me about a year ago. Um, says that it didn't happen, and at the time that it happened, he threatened to tell the organization that I initiated it, that it was my fault, that all these different things. And he was like, they're going to take your job. Because at that time I had become country director again. There's so many like little details. It would take way too long to go through every little thing. But he ended up. It's so complicated. And again, like I would say that we had started like kind of dating, but he wanted to keep it a secret. And then things escalated, and I said no. I remember because I was like, I learned about this. Like I said no, and that was not respected. And then I was threatened, and he was like, if I tell, they're going to tell you to leave. And he was like, I'm going to stay. He goes, they can't tell me to leave. It's not my fault. You led me on. So that was going on. But of course, like, because that happened and because of everything else, just one thing on top of another, like I could tell I was starting to shut down. Like I was over it. And the girls that I was living with, Sarah and Bella, they wanted us to move into a smaller house. They felt like the house that we were in was too big, and they wanted to move to a smaller house and have the boys move into a different house that's even bigger and make that new house the ministry house, and we live in a smaller house, the girls. And I remember being like, we don't really have the money to do that because, you know, it costs, moving is expensive, you know, that applies everywhere. And I didn't really want to move, and they decided to move, and I felt like the entire time, anytime that I like asked a question about it, I was like, we can afford this place. Like, what's going on? Like, they were like, oh, well, the boys tell us that we're moving. It really came down to like, the boys would kind of make a decision and we just followed. And I often felt like, and I don't want to speak for the other girls, like maybe there were things going on that I don't know. But I felt like I was the only one that questioned it. And I don't feel like I ever got answers. So we tried to move, and we ended up being kind of homeless for a little bit because the girls like really wanted to move. So we got out of our contract at the current house, and we moved into a house that our friend was house sitting for. And I remember asking our friend, can we even stay here? Like, do the owners still like have a contract? Like, what's going on? the girls were like, no, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. Like, stop asking so many questions. And I said, okay. So we moved all of our stuff in there. Then the owners found out that we moved in, and we almost got in huge legal trouble because we weren't supposed to be there. We had less than 24 hours to get our stuff out. And the girls said that it was like, oh, something like, the devil trying to stop us, or like whatever, like something. And I was just like, we had no right to be here. This is not our house. And they just wanted to move because I really don't know why. And so we had to crash at the guy's house for a little bit of time because they had moved into an even bigger house. And so we were kind of able to do that. It was like a split level, so we were kind of able to do that. And then we ended up getting a house of our own. And really, like, at that point, because our team had expanded, we went from a team of 3, we doubled, so it was a team of 6, one being a local. We all started like doing different ministry things, so like there'd be some days that like 2 of us would do this, 2 of us would do that, 2 of us would do, and then we would do some things all together, but some things separate. We didn't have to do everything together. But I do remember Andrew and Kirsten having a call with us as a group, and they had new rules for like the ministry that never sat right with me. By this point, we had pretty decent funding. We had raised quite a bit of money. We had gotten a lot better at fundraising and all these things, and so we actually had money to do ministry, which I thought was like the biggest win. And we started working specifically not in refugee camps, but with homeless refugees, because they were refugees that either came too late and the camps were full, or families that left the camps in promise of work and then were denied for whatever reason. And there were like pockets of homeless communities in our city that were not getting funding. Because refugee camps, not great conditions, but they get food, right? They get water. They have heaters in the winter, those things. Homeless refugees don't have that. And they can't work most of the time because nobody will hire them. They're not going to hire Syrians. It's very complex, but that's how it was. And so we found these pockets kind of on accident, and we started like bringing food to them, bringing heaters, bringing blankets, baby food, like things like that. And so that was kind of our niche. And Andrew and Kirsten had a call with us, and they told us that they had new rules for the ministry, that it was, you had to bring up Jesus the very first meeting, which I was a missionary. It's not to say that, but you kind of have like a groove, right? And we were living in the Middle East where people were dying for their faith, right? Like, I knew people that were killed or attempted. So it wasn't something to mess around with. Like, there's a severity to it. And of course our goal was to share the gospel. That's why we were there. But they said we were to always share the very first meeting, no matter what. And sometimes we hadn't been doing that. We would do that sometimes if we felt safe to do so. But sometimes it's for your own safety that you don't do it either, right? And for the safety of the people that you're ministering to. Because if there's one person in the room that's interested, but the other 4 are not, that's also not okay. And so we were to bring it up the first time and drop off food. The second time we were to bring it up again and ask them if they are interested in a Bible or whatever. If they said no, we give them one more chance. But the second time we don't bring food. The third time we go back, we bring food. We offer the gospel. We had like Bibles get like donated to us in Arabic and Kurdish. And we had like physical copies, and we also had like digital. And we were told to bring the food with us on the third time, let them see the food. Like, we would bring the food in with us, offer the gospel. If they said yes, they got to keep the food. If they said no, we left and we don't come back, and we take the food with us. These are people who were unable to work. Oftentimes they had injuries, like they had been hit, like they were, in various situations where they had been injured from the war, different things like that. We were told not to give them food, but let them know that we had it. I didn't necessarily follow that rule. I would only visit them 3 times, but I would always leave the food. I didn't feel right about that. That just never sat right with me because I remember being like, and at that time in my life, I won't talk too much about this. I no longer consider myself Christian. I don't, I wouldn't, I would not call myself that. But at that point in my life, like I I was very devout. Like everything I did, like, I would spend hours in prayer every day. I read chapters of the Bible every day. Like I worshiped. I was a missionary. Like, are you kidding? And that just never, I couldn't do it. I was like, I will bring these people food until the day I die, even if they never accept, because I don't feel like that's something if it's within my power, I don't feel that I should be able to withhold it. Like that is not okay. And at that point, I had been there. This is like towards the end of my time with Light a Candle. This is probably like they made that rule probably within the last 6 months of me being there. And after all that time, like I knew better than to question anything. I knew better, so I just didn't. I didn't like that every time I questioned something, I felt attacked and I got lied to. And it always came back to my character about how I wasn't able to trust and how all these different things that I was like, I don't want this to be my fault. And so I just never brought it up. And then we used to, once a week, we went up to, Kelly, do you remember that in that refugee camp, there was that center for the kids that had been rescued from ISIS? We actually worked with them for a really long time. I loved working with them. I taught music lessons up there. We would go once a week. And then eventually, after we got to be a team of 6, they asked if we could come twice a week. And we had a lot of other stuff going on. We had weekly worship nights that I led. And the reason I say that I led it is it usually required like a teaching. And even if I wasn't doing the teaching, like, and like preparing the set and like they wanted us to cook for it too. So like all these different things that like, it took me like a good day and a half to prepare for that. Sometimes more depending on the situation. And then we had other things going on. We were visiting refugees, like homeless refugees and all these things. And I just was like, I don't feel that I have the capacity because it was a good like 2 hours one way from where we lived. And so I was like,
I was going to say that was quite a distance to get to that one.
it was very far. It was very far. Like 2.5 hours with like multiple checkpoints to get through in between. And sometimes those checkpoints had no line and they were very quick. And sometimes they had a very long line, which could easily like double your time. And so I remember like, they wanted us to go on Mondays and Fridays. And I said, I'll stick with Fridays. That's when I've been doing my music lesson. Like, we'll keep doing that. But I was like, I'm not going to go on Mondays because there's so much other stuff going on. And that's part of why I started fundraising for my own car, because I wanted for them to be able to take the ministry van, obviously, and then I would have my own transportation. Because at that point, I had enough connections that there were places I could go by myself. And I even was like, sometimes I just want to take the day by myself because I was always around people. I'm pretty introverted and we were always around each other. There were a lot of times where like just the team as a whole felt like really codependent. Like the girls didn't want to do anything without each other, and myself included in moments. Like I'm not like pinpointing things, but like we were always together. And so I just wanted some time. And so I told them that, and they again confronted me saying that I was pulling away, that I was, not being part of the group, that I was like stifling the Holy Spirit, like I wasn't doing the ministry that he asked us to do. And I remember I was pretty fed up at that point. Shortly after that, and this is all happening, I had the sexual assault had just happened. They've confronted me about pulling away, all these different things. Andrew and Kirsten, I can tell, are irritated with me because they're being told that I'm pulling away. And again, comments are made about me being promiscuous, like all these different words about me, right? And there was one day, Adam and we had become like co-country directors. And Adam had left to visit, he's from the UK. He went out of town for his sister's wedding and he was gone something happened with like the airport and Erbil ended up like shutting down for something. I can't, that was very common, so I don't remember what it was at that specific time, but his 2 week trip ended up turning into like a 1 month trip because he had to wait for the airport to reopen. And so I was kind of like leading things while he was gone. And there was a day that the other 4 members, yeah, and then Adam was called in. They wanted to have a team dinner. They wanted to have like a team night and watch a movie. And I didn't think anything of it. We did stuff like that all the time. So I'm helping make dinner with the girls. We're all laughing, having a good time. And we get into the living room after dinner and they call Adam in. He's on Zoom and they say, "This is an intervention." And I said, "What?" And Sarah is leading the charge, which does not surprise me. She had 2 weeks before that been like, "Hey, why are you pulling away?" And I remember being like, "I don't think that I am." And she goes, "Are you depressed?" And I said, "I don't think so." I said, "I feel fine." And at that point, I think I had visibly started to get irritated with like Andrew and Kirsten. Like, I think that that's true. I'm not going to deny that. It had been years of like frustration. So I think that there were times that I was visibly irritated. I would not say that I was depressed at that moment. Like, I don't think that I was. But like 2 weeks prior to this intervention, she's like, "Are you depressed?" And I was like, "No." And she goes, "You seem like you might be suicidal." And I said, I'm not. I was like, "Thank you." And I remember saying, "Thank you for checking in on me. I I really think I'm okay." And she goes, "Well, I really think that you should pray about it." And I said, "Okay." And she goes, and we were roommates, we lived together. And she was like, "Okay, and if you ever feel ready to talk about it, you can come to me." And I said, "Thank you." And I remember being so confused because we had been like singing in the car right before like we were like laughing and like singing and like she turned down the music to ask like to have that conversation with me and I was like I felt like I had whiplash. I was like it felt like completely out of left field and I was like I think I remember saying like and because she had expressed frustration with Andrew and Kirsten as well and I was like and I think we had just had some kind of run-in with them who even like we had run-ins with them like so regularly where it was like they're like, "Oh, we're gonna tell Sean about this," or like things like that were like so common that like they don't even register with me anymore. Like I stopped thinking about it because I was like, "All right, go ahead, tell Sean that I wore an inappropriate T-shirt. Like, go ahead." And so we had just had some kind of run in, and so I was like, "Sarah, I've expressed my frustration. You know about that." But I was like, other than that, like I'm fine. And I was like, "I still love Iraq." And I remember she said it might be time for you to leave. Like she said that to me directly. And then she also said it to our other roommate. She was like, "Yeah, I think it might be time for a leave." And I remember being like, "I don't want to." Like at that time, I did end up leaving shortly after, which we'll get to that. But at that time, I loved living in Iraq. Like I loved it so much that I put up with all of that. And so fast forward like 2 weeks later, it's that intervention. Sarah's leading it. And she starts just saying like, "Well, you don't do things with us anymore. Do you remember when you pulled away from rugby? Now you're not going with us to that camp twice a week." She goes, "You only want to go once. You don't want to go twice. You don't want to do things with us when we do family or like they called it like family nights or team nights. Like it was kind of interchangeable." She was like, "You don't always want to do those." And I was like, "Well, we do them every day." Like sometimes I just want to stay home. Because at that point we were living like 20 minutes from the team house. And I was like, sometimes I just want to stay home. Like if we've been out for 8 to 12 hours, I don't want to go make dinner for the boys. Like sometimes I just want to stay in bed. I'm pretty tired. And to be honest, I think I blacked out. Like I don't remember everything that was said. And then she talked for probably 15, 20 minutes. I'm weeping, like absolutely in tears. Like I can't believe this. Like, and just the things that she was saying about me, like about how I wasn't following scripture, that I was going against our leadership. And she referenced, the like sharing the gospel 3 times and then not coming back. She was like, "I know that you still talk to some of those people." Like things like that were just like getting thrown at me. And I'm weeping. And I look at the other two, and the only 2 other people in the room with me are my other female roommate and then the man who assaulted me. So I'm like, I've got no backup here. But I look at both of them, and then I look at Adam, who's on Zoom, and I said, can you guys tell me what she's talking about? And she again adds that she thinks I'm suicidal. She said that again. She said that like multiple times. And I remember being like, where are you getting that? Like, where is that coming from? And I'm just completely broken. And I look at them and I say, can you guys tell me what she's talking about? Like, have you seen me act that way? And all of them said, we don't know, but Sarah's very discerning, so she must know. Sarah's very discerning. That was always like that was all they said was, we haven't seen it with our own eyes, but Sarah's discerning. You can't tell her that the Holy Spirit isn't moving through her in this. And I said, but I'm not suicidal. And Sarah goes, well, you must have some kind of spirit on you then. We had a rental car that the girls were sharing at that time. The girls gave me the keys to the car to our house. They said they were going to stay at the boys' house. Or no, I think the boys drove them home. Sorry. The boys were going to drive them home later. They sent me home. I wasn't allowed to watch the movie with them. I didn't get to finish dinner. Like, we had dessert. Like, I didn't get to do that with them. They sent me home to think about it. The next day was a day that I normally would have gone with them to that refugee camp that's like 2 hours away. It was a Friday. I was supposed to go. They told me by message not to go. They said, you're going to stay home. They took the car, they took the keys. And the way that like the houses work there, you lock it by key inside and out. They took the key. I was literally locked inside my house. I could not have left. I didn't have a vehicle. I didn't have anything. They locked me inside my house. Nobody spoke to me for 24 hours. So they told me I was suicidal out of nowhere, and then they locked me in a house. I remember during that time, I called Adam, because Adam and I at that point had like a pretty good like friendship. I called him sobbing, and I was like, Adam, can you tell me what's going on? I was like, what did Sarah say? Like, what is happening? And he was like, yeah, it was her idea to lead this. And he goes, he had been gone for like 3 weeks at that point. And he goes, I assumed something bad had happened. He goes, she told me that things had taken a turn for the worse with you since I've been gone. And I believed her because she gave me examples. Like, she said all these things. And I was like, well, I don't know what she's talking about. And he goes, now that I think of it, she really didn't give me examples. She just swore up and down that that was true. And he apologized. And I said, Adam, I'm leaving. And he goes, talk to Andrew and Kirsten. Don't book a flight before you speak to them. He goes, they're still your leadership. You need to, respect them. I reached out to Andrew and Kirsten, who were not present for the call, but were informed. And I was also told, this is one situation where I don't actually know if Sean was involved or not, because I was told it was brought to his attention, but I never spoke to him about it. So I really, I don't know. So yeah, that I really don't know. But I tried for a good 3 or 4 days to connect with Andrew and Kirsten. I tried to set up a call. They weren't responding to me. So I booked flights and I left. I booked flights and I left 2 weeks later. And I said that I was going to go back and I didn't. Kind of like what Aspen did. Because I left my stuff there. I had the majority of my belongings were still there. I got back to the US and at that point I was depressed, but I wouldn't have said I was before. But I got to my sister's place and I didn't get off the couch for weeks. And I was just like, what happened? I have no idea what happened. And nobody reached out to me from the team in Iraq. Andrew and Kirsten, all of a sudden, since I told them I was leaving, they were like, oh, we'll call you every day. They didn't call me every day, but they said that. And I did have a call with them and I was just like, I just need some time. I was like, this wasn't okay. This wasn't okay. And they again said, well, Sarah's discerning. She must know something. She must know something. And I said, but you're not listening to what I'm saying at all. And I was like, no one can give me an example. Again, all of the, I never understood. And I don't understand, the things that they were telling me I was doing wrong. I never knew, there was never any evidence of that. and I'm not here to say that I did everything perfect. Like, I was a young girl. Like, I probably did flirt with a couple of guys. Like, I probably, like, I was 21, I don't know why that made me such a whore in their eyes. And I'm using that word because it was used. I don't know what my problem was. Like, I don't know what it was about me. And again, from what I saw, again, I don't know what was going on behind closed doors. I don't know exactly what was said to Sarah and Bella from Andrew and Kirsten. But when I would say like the things that they would say to me, like they never said they also talked to me like that. So I never knew what it was. I was like, do you guys just not like me? Like, if that's okay, you don't have to, but you don't have to be mean. Like, I don't know where this is coming from. So I was in, and at that time, I still thought I was going to go back. I thought I was going to take a couple of weeks, maybe a month. I called it a sabbatical. I was going to just stay there. And I had a really good friend who lived in Kansas. So I ended up going to Kansas and staying with her for like 2 weeks. And one of my first days there, I wake up to a message from Sarah, and it's a long, long message that reads, I have a screenshot of it somewhere, but I don't like to look at it for fun. It's this really long message where she says that God gave her a vision about me, like all these different things that felt really threatening. And she sent another message that was like, by the way, I've sent the same message to Andrew and Kirsten. In that moment, I knew I was done for. Like, I knew there was nothing I could do to come back from that. For one, I was not sexually assaulted as a child. But in that moment, as I shared, like one of the other missionaries like had taken advantage. And so I'm thinking, is she right? Is this my fault? And Andrew and Kirsten, like as I'm reading that message, sent me a message asking to call. And I told them no. And with the help of my friend who I was staying with, I wrote in my resignation letter. I didn't want to hear what they had to say because I knew. I think we had sent a couple messages back and forth. Like they had said, like, oh, we got the message from Sarah. Like we need to discuss it. And I said, I think I flat out asked them, like, do you believe it? And they were like, well, Sarah is discerning. If she believes that that spirit is on you, then there must be some truth to it. And so I wrote my resignation and I sent it to them. And they asked if we could call before they accepted it. And I said, well, I can talk to you on the phone. At that point, I was like, okay, I'll talk to you on the phone. But I was like, I'm not going back. I'm done. And nobody else on the team had reached out to me, by the way. Like none of my roommates who I thought that like we had family nights all the time. Like they were like my closest friends. They were my friends. Nobody said anything except that message from Sarah. And I had been gone for about a month at this point. My birthday passed. Nobody said anything. And I know they know it was my birthday because we all had like, we did birthday celebrations. Like that was something that we did for each other. Nobody said anything. I had a call with Andrew and Kirsten. And I had originally said, it's so complicated. I have a sister that lives in Reading, and they were living in Reading. And so my sister was going to get married. And so I had initially told them like, hey, I'm going to be in Reading. We can do our meeting in person. And then crazy turn of events, my sister ended up moving her wedding. So I was like, I'm no longer going to Reading. And I didn't really explain that to them. I just said, I'm no longer going to Reading. I didn't say like, I went to my sister's wedding. I didn't really tell them the details because at that point I had resigned and I was not sharing my personal life with them. They, on the call, started accusing me of, again, withdrawing. They were like, you're pulling away from everyone. They go, you didn't even go to your sister's wedding. What's wrong with you? And again, I was like, they were like, you promised that you were coming to Reading and then you realized you had to see us and you wouldn't come. And I was like, that's not at all what happened. That's not at all what happened. And they said that again with the, like they said that they had talked to Sean about it. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that, I have no idea. It kind of felt like Sean was like the big, like scary guy. Like everybody was like, I'm going to tell Sean. But like, what's he going to do? I don't think he's going to do anything. Like in my time, I think I've met Sean. I met his kids a bunch of times. I met his wife a bunch of times. I think I had like 4 one-on-one conversations with Sean. that lasted less than 5 minutes. But anytime I did something wrong, I was told that Sean knew about it. So I don't really know like the depth of that, to be honest. But they're on this call, they're accusing me of, not being with my family, and of like, they said, if you leave in this way without God's blessing, you're going to regret it. They said, you are leaving against the Holy Spirit's will. And I said, at that point, I said, okay, I don't care. And they said, you're going to regret that. They echoed what Sarah said. Bad things are going to happen to you if you leave this way. And I hung up the phone and I blocked them on every platform and every way. People still tried to reach out to me through various ways. Like, I still got emails, and like, I blocked Andrew's Light a Candle email, so he'd email me from his personal email, or, things like that. And that was pretty heavy for like 6 months. And they all just said they wanted to connect. We want to connect. And I was done. I had actually, for a short time, I joined a different missions organization, and I moved to Turkey, and I didn't tell anybody from that organization. And that was short-lived. I wasn't able to get a visa, which is probably for the best. I think I needed some healing. I needed like to not be in the Middle East for a little bit, but people were still trying to reach me. And then it was like, kept trying to call me. And when he did, I remember asking if I would send him pictures, and I said no, and then I blocked him. Things like that, where it's just like, I remember I wanted to talk about ministry, and then he was like asking for pictures and things that like I would have never, like that I never did, would have never done. And I was like, where is this coming from? And then I'm internalizing, and I'm going, I must have that promiscuous spirit. Like, there must be something wrong with me. And so I ended up back in the US, and so much has happened since then. And again, I've gone through a lot of therapy, I've gone through a lot of healing, and I'm happy, and things are going really well for me now, and I'm happy about that. But yeah, it was really crazy. Really crazy few years of my life, and I don't think that I don't even know how I could explain all of the details and all of the nuance. I just know that like money was always missing. We were expected to front ministry costs, and we couldn't ask why. We were told we couldn't bring food to people who didn't let us share their gospel after our third visit. There was something wrong with me. Who knows? So that was like, those are like the big things. Again, I don't know that I could get into all of the nitty gritty. There's so much. But yeah.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. I really am. It is not Jesus.
Thank you guys for giving me the space to talk about it, because I feel like if you don't know, like, it's hard to explain. And I'm not happy that you guys have experienced enough to like understand, but it is still really healing to talk to people who know. Because for years after, I mean, we're at year 3, so I'm 3.5, something like that, and I'm doing a lot better. But for the first year, 2 years, I really thought that I was crazy. I really thought there was something wrong with me. Because that's all I was told. I was never given anything else. And when you're told something for so long, I had no reason, like, I believed it. I had every reason to believe it. Because if everybody around me said that they saw it, then who was I to say that it wasn't true? And so again, like, I think that's why I am really excited that you started the website, because it's no longer just my voice, because I didn't stand a chance against them. The times that I tried to speak up, it was nothing by myself. And I don't say this to sound weak or to sound like, but I don't stand a chance against them on my own. I really don't. And another thing that I fought was, I don't want to come across as like bitter. Like, I don't want to tear them down for the sake of it, because that's not my intention. It's, again, I don't want someone else to go through that, because it wasn't okay. And again, for someone like Sean to be in charge of all that, and he just, like, the times that he did talk to us, like, he would do like group calls or like emails or things like that, or like if they were like, okay, we talked, Andrew and Kirsten would be like, we talked to Sean, this is what he had to say, like things like his voice was always present. I didn't really convey that before in the details, but like his leadership, his direction was always what we followed. It was him that had those ideas about, the 3 times rule, that's what they call it, the 3 times rule, whatever. Like, it was, that stuff was coming from him, is what we were told. And so while we didn't hear his voice directly all the time, like, anything that we did came from Sean, and then we executed. And so he would always say that, like, he didn't like having girls on the team because we were just too much drama. And they were, so, like, the idea was like, oh, we don't want to tell Sean that you're causing drama. Like, because it was so, like, the way that Sean spoke about women specifically was just so disrespectful. And so then it was like, you have to be the right kind of woman to not do that. And again, it brought me back to, if you don't want women on your team, why are we here? If you don't want us to cause drama, if you don't want, people to be people, like, come on. Like, you put 5 Americans in in a situation where you're the only Americans that like, drama is gonna happen. Like, that's really unavoidable. And I feel like that's the case. I've never had any job, any experience where, like, people don't cause drama with each other to different degrees. And sometimes, a lot of the time, it's just silly. But, like, that's a very regular thing. I've been to amazing churches in my life. Even in those amazing churches, there's somebody who's causing a little bit of drama, right? Like, that is so normal, Yeah. And the way that women were talked about, like, oh, all they do is stir things up. All they do is this. All they do. And so it was like, I didn't want to be that. And so I just shut up. Like, what was I supposed to do? And then when I left, it was like, well, I have no leg to stand on because I'm just a woman who caused a bunch of drama because it centered around me. I was the problem. And they would say that they could do, but they would make comments about, like, they could do better ministry without me. And so, fine, go ahead. There wasn't anything I could do.
I'm so sorry. Oh, thank you for sharing with us. It means a lot. It really does. Thank you for opening up your heart and your voice, and it really means a lot to us. Can I ask a couple of questions? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
With the sexual assault, did you report to anybody, like the authorities? You did not report any of that?
I did not. The one specifically, like the one in Iraq, I don't think there was a way for me to report it. They have different laws. And my therapist asked me more, like, when I first talked about this, was a while ago, asked me about if I would consider reporting the one that happened overseas, because I knew that he had moved back to the US. I'd heard from somebody. And I freaked out when I knew, because we were from the same state and I was living there at the time. And so I considered doing something about it, but I never did, because I just felt like my voice was so insignificant in that. I felt like every time I asked a question, everything I did, it was always, I was like, it's his word against mine. And something that he said to me directly after the assault, like, I remember, again, in my mind, it was like, okay, if we end up getting together in the end, it'll be okay. Like, I'm trying to come up with any reason to, like, justify, like, to make it okay, to make myself feel better. And I asked him if he liked me. Like, I remember asking him that. And he goes, are you kidding? No, I don't. And he goes, you've made it too easy for me. And then he said, I don't even look at you when you walk into a room because I don't want other people to even think that I like you. And so I knew he had gone out of his way to make himself, like, look like he wasn't interested in me. And I didn't add this before. He had told Sarah that I was obsessed with him. And so that was part of the intervention, that I was being inappropriate towards this guy. And so I didn't feel safe. I didn't ever report him.
Do you feel safe now? I mean,
I feel safe now because I feel like I've finally gotten to a place where they can't find me. The person who assaulted me reached out to me about a year ago. He had created a new social media account on a like, it was Instagram, and I already had him blocked on Instagram, but he created a new account and tried to message me. I blocked him immediately, didn't respond, and he, a few months later, found me on LinkedIn, of all places, and tried to message me on there. Like, that was a year ago, and I left Iraq. Last time I spoke to him, like, was that intervention. back in, that was 2022, maybe 2021. I can't, it's fuzzy, but still to this day, well, not exactly to this day, but I have fought very hard to make sure that they can't find me. And so that's why I feel safe.
I'm just so sorry. I wish there was something that I could say even, um, except for that. I'm just so sorry this was not handled well. And the leaders that didn't listen to you, that did not create a safe environment for you, that's not okay on every single level. The spiritual abuse that happened, it's real. You were not crazy. The isolation that took place, and it's not okay. It's very serious. And I just want to acknowledge that for you and in you, and that I believe you, believe everything that you've said. And I acknowledge that this is not something that I take lightly at all. Kelly doesn't, Amanda doesn't. And we just want you to know that we're here for you.